6 show, week 11, double digits. We're on the back end, the back 9. We're definitely halfway through with the regular season. As always, myself, Dean Shavelson, Rich Hribar, Sharp Football Analysis, the worksheet, John Daigle, 4 for 4. Right before we went on air, Daigle, people are hitting you up on a Wednesday night. On a Wednesday night, they're hitting you up for start sit questions. I certainly hope one of these players is playing on Thursday at least. John, welcome to the show. Is this like Sunday players, Monday players, or is at least somebody on a Thursday? You're getting hit up with a head-to-head or this guy or that guy on Wednesday.
The worst part is it's not the DMs. It's actually like my good friends in actual life who I see on weekends to have drinks with. And he texted me and asked, would you trade his Jonathan Taylor for Raheem Mostert and Cooper Kupp? Season-long question. I would rather have Mostert and Kupp personally, but also this question has a lot of context. I'm going to have to figure it out behind the scenes with them and ask his roster, as most of these questions do. Reebs, in a vacuum, what would you do?
I would probably rather have Jonathan Taylor, but I don't know the context either.
Yeah,
I don't answer trade questions on Twitter usually because I don't know if they're real trade offers or not. And like, I always worry about people. It's like, because they're like, should I even offer this? So I'm going to ask and see like what the trade is. So I don't even know like if the trade offer is real. So I don't answer trade questions because I don't even know if it's like a waste of time or not. Because
the reason I don't answer trade questions is because at least on Twitter, it immediately causes me to run an errand. Like I have to ask you then a second question because we need the context of the rosters to understand like, will Mostert slide into your flex? Like what's the deal here? Yeah. Because based on the surface, the better raw player is JT since the usage is trending that direction. But again, like maybe it just works out better in your favor to have 2 startable players immediately. So this is why I just avoid Twitter. This is what I do.
Yeah, my thought process behind it is with Achane coming back and, Mostert going back to be like a 50% player.
Reebs, you once told me, I don't want to give away the secret, but I feel like you once told me we had a conversation, like people in real life asking you about fantasy stuff. Like, how do you avoid people talking about fantasy at parties? When people ask what you do, you say you're a data analyst, right? Is that your answer?
Yeah, at Christmas and stuff, when my family asks what I do, or like people ask, I just say I'm in predictive analysis. And then that's it. No more questions.
And they move on.
You say you do something about football, you're gonna get some bullshit question, man. And like I'm not saying that nobody knows. And I don't know more than the average person, but like I don't want to talk about Deshaun Watson at a party. Like I don't do those things, man. I don't want to hear about your favorite team. Like
Whereas Dean, I'm single, so I talk about football on TV. That's how I express what I do.
There you go.
I like a lot of things outside of football, so I don't want to talk about football.
And John, it gets you out of tickets as well. I think once you told the story about the getting pulled over. Oh, you're the famous John Daigle from the interwebs. There you go. That works sometimes.
Remember, I got the Giannis tickets free last year. We did a show early around this time because this is the time of year where my beard gets disheveled. I don't even hide the beer cans anymore. I'm just drinking on the show. Like it's just that time of the year where you start giving up because it's just like, yeah, we're talking about football now. Everyone knows what we're doing at this point. So we get into it.
It's getting more and more dreary, I imagine, outside for you in Chicago.
420 darkness. And that's not a good 420. Like that's literally when it became pitch black dark. Horrible.
For real? It's dark at 420. That's so wild, man.
I'm not kidding. 420 Central Time. It's done. Like completely done.
Yeah. And I assume it's cold too. I don't know. I'm down here in Florida, so I can't really speak to that. It's just been raining the past. Yeah, I've seen pictures. All right.
It is comparable, Dean, to like I start drinking earlier when the sun goes down compared to how you handled the free bet situation, not having that in Florida when you arrived in Tennessee for the Super Bowl party. Like you literally opened up 15 different sports books and said, free bets, here we are. Yep. You even stayed, you purchased an extra Airbnb for a couple weeks later just to stay there and take advantage of the bets to pay itself off, which is wise, but that's how I handle my beer whenever the sun goes down. It's like, oh yeah, it's time.
It is nice when you go to a state for the first time. And I don't know if this is something you just kind of bounce around from state to state. It'd make for a fun road trip for sure. But just, Tennessee had a bunch of sports books I've never opened an account in. And I had like 7 or 8 accounts immediately and a bunch. It was a little tricky to keep track of, but it was a lot of fun as well. And now I still get a ton of emails. And I guess when I go back to Tennessee, we'll figure it out. Maybe I get some redeposit bonuses. But hey, the people don't want to hear about that. They want to hear about the picks. The true grinders, grinders are still going at it. The ones that are just kind of dabbling, it didn't work out the first so many weeks, they're gone. We missed them. We wish they're still around, but we appreciate those that are still grinding, especially those that are grinding us live on a Wednesday night in the chat. Hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. Do join the Listener League. I just dropped the link to the Listener League. The winner last week is John Hers 40. John Hers 40. Do let us know in the chat. Let us know, not the live chat. Let us know in the comment section. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit up RotoGrinders on Twitter. I'm at DFS_Almanac or just RotoGrinders. Let us know. Show yourself. We're going to get you a month free of RotoGrinders Premium, and we're going to continue doing that going forward. If you win next week's, you'll get a month. Anybody wants to play, feel free to jump in there. And Rich, you were the biggest score amongst those that played that are on the show. Therefore, you're going to assign us a movie later on in the show. After all the football talk, you're going to assign us a movie that we're going to watch during the week and talk about next week. Producer Rob assigned us a movie last week. We're all still scarred, probably. We're going to talk about both that we all watched last week. Oh, man, that is going to be a fun conversation.
I have thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts about Rob did not warn us about.
Yeah, I tried to warn you guys without warning you last week.
Yeah, that's fair. You did not warn us, but you gave us subtle hints.
But I couldn't lead you down the path.
No, you can't. You have to. I get it. You have to breadcrumb everyone. You have to get there yourself, and then go through your own. Go to therapy yourself. I totally get it. Yeah.
I thought we made a pact that like fun movies from now on this show, and like Rob immediately broke that pact. It was we'll talk about it.
I will tease horizontal tease and say I'm excited. I'm very excited to talk about it. I have lots of thoughts.
Also, Dean, you kind of let in, like I always tell people too, like, I know a lot of people have played DFS or like they moved on to NBA or whatever. Like, this is the time you want to like come into this show and consume content.
Absolutely.
This is where like the home stretch is. I think I talked about like literally I've gone and like pulled my data and like the best I've played is like from Thanksgiving on, and I do believe it's because of the work we do, and like we're just through like the small sample stuff, right? And granted, the NFL is a small sample inherently, but like this is the home stretch, like where like all the data, like we can start applying a lot of this stuff, and it really fits in.
I'm having the best cash game, like literally Roto Tracker is showing me. And again, we've talked about this in the past. I go back to the Star Street days. I'm having the best cash game season of my entire career. And I literally think it's because no one uses context anymore. I think everyone just dives into the Sims. And like even on Sunday, whenever the lineup's locked and the cards were about to be flipped, I knew I was going to see a bunch of Tony Pollard and Joe Mixon, and those guys just don't beat you. Who cares about Joe Mixon and Tony Pollard? It's just like such an advantageous time, especially now with a whole half of a season left to jump in.
Yeah, I'm sure Tony Pollard's going to come up again this week as well. We'll have that conversation. He fell flat on his face.
He beat you guys last week. I know that.
Yes, you used them against us and still found a way to win. We said
I try to lose those. I try to lose those usually.
Yeah.
Also, if you remember the Wednesday night tight ends, whatever the optimizer says, the optimizer said to play Hawkinson and McBride double tight end.
Easy game.
I did not do that, but
I didn't play them both. But those were my two. Those were my two top tight ends in my player pool, though.
You mean Ed Werder didn't shake you off of Hawkinson? I was told that he was only going to play like what was the line Ed Werder said?
I think it was like critical situations, right, or something.
Yeah. And to be a little bit fair, although he was wrong still. To be fair to Ed Werder, Hawkinson did play only, quote unquote, only 63% of snaps, but that's also why this show is on a rampage to cancel snap rates, because we don't care. Whenever you have a 46% target share, who cares how many snaps you play?
You guys got me in line on that one pretty quickly. I stopped quoting snap stuff, and I definitely saw the light. Much better point as far as snap rate doesn't matter. Its participation matters a lot more, obviously. So this is your first time. I can't imagine, but if it's your first time on the show, how this works. We focus on 3 main games on the main slate, 11 games. We get 11 games this week. We talk about those 3 games, forwards and backwards. Then we kind of run it back, give our favorite plays position by position in, amongst games that we not yet talked about, the remaining 8. Bad job by the NFL, by the way. 8 1:00 games, 3 4:00 games. We got to do better, NFL. We got to do better. Hopefully we redeem ourselves next week. Speaking of small samples here, Reebs, Arizona at Houston. We got a small sample of Kyler Murray. What did you see? That's our first game. 47.5 is a total. Houston is a 4.5-point favorite. They have the greatest quarterback for the next 10 years. It's phenomenal.
God.
Congratulations to them. It's so good. I hope they don't screw it up. But yeah, Kyler Murray, what did you see? What are you expecting going forward from Murray and Arizona?
Yes, simultaneously, C.J. Stroud tearing down the narrative of Ohio State quarterbacks while Jackson Smith-Njigba tears down the wide receiver narrative. Pretty poetic that we've got.
Have you seen the TikTok of the singing children, like all dressed in costumes? And there's the one kid who comes up and he's a beautiful singer, and like it just has the label C.J. Stroud, but the past kids all have like Cardell Jones, Justin Fields, all those guys memed over him. All right, I'll send it to you later. So everybody check that out.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out. Yeah. But yeah, God bless CJ Stroud, man. He's not having a great rookie season. Like he's having a great context and like this of like an established quarterback right now. Like what he's doing. I mean, he threw for 9.1 yards per pass attempt on Sunday. He's now third in the NFL in yards per pass attempt. He has a 7.5 touchdown interception ratio. The next closest quarterback is at 4.5. He's got 125 first downs passing. That trails only Tua and Sam Howell, who has already hasn't had a bye yet. Has played an extra game. He's completing 55% of his throws on 20 or more air yards. Like absolutely insane. The league averages 36%. Absolutely awesome. And you talk about this game in context, see like the Cardinals are 28th in the league in pressure rate. When Stroud hasn't been pressured, he's averaging 9.3 yards per pass attempt. He's got 15 touchdowns, which is second in the NFL when he's not pressured. I mean, just another like kind of really great spot for him. Again, they've been better at home. I mean, just fire up the Texans and your Texan stacks. I'll let Daigle talk about Devin Singletary because he was on him last week, and hopefully we can get there again because it's another great matchup. But I'll talk about the wide receivers and the pass catchers for a minute. I know you want to talk about Kyler Murray, but we're just talking about CJ Stroud now at this point.
It's fine.
It's whatever. But I mean, Tank Dell, when is his like price going to get moved? Fanduel even has been kind of slowing. Like Tank Dell is the wide receiver one on this team, and he has been when he's on the field. I mean, he had 14 targets last week. Nico Collins was out, but when both he and Nico Collins have been on the field together, he leads the team in targets. He leads the team in target share. Arizona's a matchup we target weekly. We'll see what happens with Noah Brown and Robert Woods, who didn't practice today. We'll see if there ends up being like a little bit of rotation too, because Tank Dell has consistently been the constant. Like he's been playing the most snaps. Even before Nico Collins got hurt, Nico Collins was kind of rotating, not playing the full amount of routes that the other guys were. And we got to talk a little bit about Dalton Schultz, because one thing that kind of slipped past the Dalton Schultz stuff is that was Laramie Tunsil coming back. And, with Laramie Tunsil coming back, like Dalton Schultz now is just running pass routes instead of having to block. With Laramie Tunsil off the field, he only had a 64% route participation. And now with Tunsil now back on the field, Dalton Schultz is running a pass route and 82% of the dropbacks. So everyone here is like, you can fire them up against this really passive Arizona defense.
Yeah, jump in here, John, as far as your thoughts about Houston. I saw you tweeted 4 hours ago about all the Texans receivers expected to play this week. Does that subdue the ceiling of these guys to some degree? Like certainly, Dell he only needs a couple plays to get loose. The other thing that's worth mentioning, I wanted to acknowledge that Derek Carty's The Blitz. This is expected to have the second most game actual plays. It's going to be played at a fast pace and in a dome. It's a beautiful recipe for DFS. Go for it, John, and feel free, obviously, to bring in Devin Singletary.
It's like Reebs said, we're kind of waiting on injury reports, honestly. That's really going to dictate. I would personally think Robert Woods loses out here, since he was even the third wide receiver last week without Nico Collins by a wide margin behind Noah Brown. Again, like Reebs said, Noah Brown even led the team in routes run in week 1 before he got slapped on injured reserve. So Noah Brown just kind of out there. Even D'Amico Ryans talked about Brown after the game. Like he was just exploding about how good he is. He's also their best run blocking wide receiver, which is very important. So I can't imagine him, at least in terms of volume and usage, going anywhere. So we'll see how that shakes out. But for Devin Singletary, it's it's kind of another slate where we're looking for cheap options. I only got there in tournaments last week because we had no value. Like we thought we may get Zach Charbonnet, but we never got there. And then it really came down to how much faith you had between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. So Singletary just made sense against the worst rushing offense in the league. Look to Keaton Mitchell on Showdown on Thursday, by the way. But the thing is, the Texans were still the same offense against the Bengals. Like they were averaging the 7th highest run play rate on early down, which this year we've complained about because it set up CJ Stroud for longer third down. It's less.
Well, if you run it well, we don't care.
That's the thing. And because you played the Bengals, they averaged 5.7 yards per carry on early downs. And it's not the same situation, but it's still a below average situation to where you can target it. Like Arizona is 19th in yards per carry on early downs, plus 20th in yards per carry allowed to opposing running backs. Not to mention that the ball doesn't go anywhere. Like Devin Singletary has out-touched every single running back combined. Like the rest of the team's running backs only have 3 touches behind him. The ball quite literally does not go anywhere else. So now we just have an every touch back in an ideal situation. That's why I'm struggling to stack this game because I like everyone. Like it may just be like an onslaught Stroud game or onslaught the Texans overall and figure it out. See where people get to with the passing game, because I imagine given the lack of value right now at running back, we're probably getting Singletary and cash games, which means the ownership trickles down to the tournaments. So then you can just kind of start pivoting off of that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I want to play everyone, and I don't know how to do it just yet.
You say onslaught, that means the way I hear onslaught is like you don't play anybody on the other side. Like you play Dallas onslaught versus the Giants. Would you not consider a Cardinals run back?
I think, to me, onslaught means like 4 from one side and 1 or 2 from the other. That's the way I envision onslaughts, like onslaughting an entire game, probably just because I still have PTSD from the Texans playing the Bucks and just literally everyone getting there. So that's the kind of the way I look at it. It is interesting though, because we saw Trey McBride kind of keep his target share, literally led the team with a 29% target share. He did get a lot of his yards, although again, he was earning targets, but he got a lot of his yards on that final drive where Kyler had a whole career in one drive, that one scramble where he did circles like a squirrel. He's back. Next Gen Stats actually tracked him for 74 yards running around on that one scramble just to pick up on 3rd and 10. And then he had that play where he just Hail Married it. Like it wasn't even a good play, honestly, but Trey McBride, because he's so big, just threw his cornerback to the side and they didn't call it. And he came back to the ball and caught it. Having said that, though, I think the interesting player in this game, because we know the kind of targets Marquise Brown is going to get. Not to say he won't get there, but we know they're going to be volatile. I'm curious to see where his ownership goes to because of that. I think Rondale Moore is interesting at his price because not only the 2nd highest target share, 25.8%, behind Trey McBride and over Marquise Brown, but also his depth of target, like nearly was so much larger than when he played under Cliff Kingsbury as a gadget player. 5.2 ADOT under Kingsbury, 8.1 depth of target with a 25% target share under Jonathan Gannon. That's super important considering his salary on both sides. So that's kind of the way I lean right now, is trying to navigate how to play the Texans plus Rondale Moore and Trey McBride coming back. Because Trey McBride is not going, like, everyone's going to play him. Everyone gets it. He's like only on DraftKings, I believe he's only 100 more than Evan Ingram, who doesn't have a single end zone target in the entire year. Like Ingram does not have a ceiling that you could play compared to Trey freaking McBride. So it's just the opportunity right now that's too good to pass on, and everyone knows it.
So Wednesday nights ran a bunch of optimals, DK specific. We're getting a lot of 2 tight end stuff again. Not a lot of value out there just yet, but
it's the year,
reasons.
Not at wide receiver. That's the big thing. Like under 4K, I'm hoping Reeves can help me out because besides Rondale Moore, man, I got nothing except reaching for Jalen Guyton. We'll get there.
There you go. That's so funny you say that. I'm staring at it. Rondale Moore, the most popular receiver, hitting the lineups at 63%. Guyton at 20% for what it's worth. And tight end wise, spoiler alert, it's going to be McBride and somebody else that's very, very close to McBride. We'll talk about in a second, but yeah, Rich, if anything else you have in Houston, by all means, go for it. But jump over to Arizona. What do you see for Kyler? That one scramble play. It just says like I assume that means he's back. Now that wasn't a called run, right? And he didn't run for a ton of yards. I think he had 33 for the game or so. He did go over his total, which was like in the mid-20s. I think that's where it settled at, mid to high 20s. Must have been a fun sweat there on that last play for sure. But yeah, Rich, what do you have there as far as Arizona? What are you seeing out of Kyler?
Yeah, I mean, Kyler was still a back-end QB1 and needed a rushing touchdown to get there. It was just nice to see him, though, with kind of no restrictions. They did the 4 designed runs, the one on the goal line. He did come out for the Clayton Tune, push, which was just gross altogether. Like, in just in general, let's do less of that, please. He left a lot of meat on the bone, though. I mean, he completed his 59% of his passes. He was 8.2% below his expected completion rate. That was 27th among all passers. And kind of the one bugaboo that he had last year was he was one of the worst deep ball throwers in the NFL last year. And we saw in the Hollywood is wide open. Like, you got to hit that throw. And he overthrew Hollywood for that. That should have been just a complete walk-in touchdown. So it was a knock off the Russ game. So we'll see where it builds. But like, he still was just a back-end guy. I will say, though, Houston, though, is kind of like things are catching up to them defensively. They have a lot of QB1 score now in 4 of their past 5 games. That includes guys like Desmond Ridder, Derek Carr, and Baker Mayfield. So, like, there's definitely upside here in this matchup for Kyler to kind of get his too. I don't have like an out for Daigle, though. It's like for like the rest of like these guys outside of McBride and Hollywood Brown. I definitely came in prepared mentally for him to sell me on Darius Slayton again, though. I said, Daigle's gonna sell me and try to sell me on Darius Slayton again this week.
Jalen Hyatt out with a concussion. I mean, we need value on this slate.
We
need lots of value here. You know me too well.
What's the Giants team total? Have you guys looked? You probably already know the Giants team total is. It's higher than it was. It was 11 versus Dallas. It's more than that now.
Hold on. Yeah. Give Tommy DeVito some credit. He finishes the QB 15 last week. He did his job. QB 15 relative for Tommy DeVito is pretty good.
I mean, they're 10-point dogs to the Commanders, though. Like, what a world.
I mean, again, we have to. T-Mobile's got to be coming back soon, right? Like, I don't know what his deal is injury wise, but
he's got
can't keep doing this.
He's got 1 more week, right?
I believe 2 or 1. And yeah, they'll definitely start him whenever he comes back for sure. Even though
they also are a team that hasn't had their bye yet.
Okay, and Washington's our one, I think. Yeah,
it sets up so well. Whereas like Carolina might mess around still and win a couple games. Dude, the Giants can try all they want. They ain't getting there. Like they're finishing with 2 games.
They play the Patriots, they got one shot.
Oh. Thankfully, we don't talk about them. They're on bye.
Throw it all out there.
I didn't watch the Zappy experience or whatever's going on there in New England, but what a disaster. We'll talk about it next week, maybe, possibly. Who knows? Maybe they'll be on the main slate.
It sounds like both get away from McBride, though. I mean, Houston's been so bad against tight ends. They've just been a target every week. I mean, you go back to the K-Dot in week 2, and just like, I mean, opposing teams have targeted their tight ends 27% of the time. That's second in the league. No one's allowed a higher share of receptions allowed to tight ends than Houston. So it's just like, and then the price didn't really go up high enough. So on either site. So I don't know how you don't get there. Because the tight end we want to play the most viable cheap guy, right? And he's easily that.
Yeah, and also, like, if you played him in the last so many weeks, you're happy and you're going to keep going back. And if you haven't played him, you're so mad at yourself. You're finally, all right, screw it. I'm finally going to play.
And also, he's not an accident. Like, this dude won the Mackey. I know that's another show's bit, but like, he's a legit talented player. Like, he's got pedigree and production, draft capital. Like, it's not like this dude is just like they just dusted this guy off and like he's just like out here playing. He probably should have been playing from the beginning of the season, to be honest.
He kind of looks badass with the arm sleeve too.
You got to factor that into the projection. Oh,
yeah,
it's
awesome.
Silva's bit, right? But Silva, many years ago,
to be fair, he's the OG pick 6 partner.
Yeah.
So we should get squatters rights a little bit to the bit
by proxy.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's not like when you're K-Dot has a big game, or like, should we chase that or anything, right? Or like a dude gets on like a run. Like Trey McBride's like a bona fide, he's a bona fide prospect.
So is Michael Mayer, who we may talk about later.
Oh, he scored a touchdown last week, didn't he? All right.
It was a good catch too.
Worth a conversation for sure, and probably in comeback mode versus Miami. I thought there was a chance that game would be on the board amongst the 3 you selected. We actually had real games to pick from. Like typically, John, I imagine, and you're you're probably struggling to get 2 or 3 games you want to talk about.
I wanted to make the theme games that could push back, because We can talk positionally about offensive onslaughts, but there are 2 or 3 situations where we're going to play the players, but we probably just won't run it back at all because we're trying to soak up touchdowns. That's a boring conversation. So I just wanted to give us 3 environments that have an opportunity to answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's not like a huge amount of games where you're just like, oh, I'm going to stack this or small field onslaught like Daigle's alluding to. That's a lot of one-offs.
Okay, so we think the Bears might punch back. I guess part of that might be if Fields play. Are we certain about Fields? We know what Fields is being projected. Okay,
he's
expected to. Good. Okay, no, the Bajan experience is over. 47.5 is the total. Chicago at Detroit. Detroit's still a pretty big favorite here. Obviously, 8.5 points, 9.5 points versus the Bears. We have a David Montgomery revenge game. Both Montgomery and Gibbs got there last week. Amon-Ra, I think he got there. He gets there every single week, right? Or at least he doesn't blow your lineup up.
Dude, I was so disappointed to see him end up as chalk too, how it ended up the week just playing out.
Well, you know what happened, Reeves, was that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase news pushed everyone down to Geno and Amon-Ra in cash games. So you could see the way the slate was about to unfold based on not trusting those other players by Sunday morning.
I came in Wednesday last week and I was like, my favorite player on the slate is Amon-Ra. Easily.
You called it.
He just ended up being the stone chalk, the chalkiest of all chalk.
Rich, I assume you like Amon-Ra again. Also,
I do always like Amon-Ra, but I'm a little more tepid in this spot a little bit. I mean, he's got 100 yards or a touchdown in every game. He gets there. I will say that the Bears are have been a sneaky kind of good defense too. They play the second the second highest rate of cover 2 in the NFL. Amon-Ra is only averaging 0.53 yards per route run against cover 2. A small sample. The Bears also, they don't want any. Mike Evans is the only wide receiver to hit 70 yards against the Bears this season. That's it. And they're legit good against the run too. They're honestly the number 1 defense against the run, against running back runs. So you'd think that would steer and they'd be more of a pass funnel. But they've actually faced a couple good wide receivers too that haven't done anything against them. So obviously they'll be tested. I think Amon-Ra's gonna get his. He's always a good floor play, but is this the week he goes for 160 and a touchdown? Probably not. I would say no.
Interesting. You want to talk about the backfield? It looked like a little bit of a change as far as the goal line stuff. Is that just 1 week, or is that how it's going?
Well, remember, David Montgomery fell on a sword for us. David Montgomery was the first touchdown that Gibbs scored, where he had the 39-yard run or whatever to the 1-yard line. They went to pull him out. Montgomery was coming in, and Montgomery said, "No, stay on the field." And they let Gibbs run it. He let Gibbs run it in himself. That's a teammate. That's what we love to see.
He's not doing that this week for Chicago. I'll tell you that.
What was interesting is, coming into last week, I said, all right, because I was like, Gibbs isn't going to get put back in the bottle at this point. I was like, oh, this might end up being a situation where it's a better version of the Atlanta backfield, right? Where it's Bijan, Gibbs is Bijan, and Montgomery's Algier. But what it ended up being was more Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. Except for just with better players. But that was the type of split we got and the types of usage we got, where Gibbs was used Aaron Jones and Monty, AJ Dillon. Gibbs ran the most pass routes, 21-10. He played the most snaps. He ended up with 17 touches. Monty ended up with 12. And then inside the 5, Gibbs played 4 snaps and Monty played 3. Remember, Monty also was in on the drive that got stuck at the goal line. So he had his opportunities too outside of the long touchdown. So it ended up being a little bit like that kind of backfield. And it can work in this, that. They're sustainable. They're not going to have this many points together on a given week, but it's sustainable given that they don't have a true wide receiver too. Sam Laporta is technically the secondary target in this offense. And so as good as Laporta is, he's not a dude that's pushing 8 to 10 targets a week either. So there is an opportunity for both of these guys to coexist due to the structure of this offense.
John, what do you got as far as Detroit, the backfield? Anything you want to add there? Anyone you favor as far as Gibbs versus Montgomery? Just beyond Amon-Ra and Laporta, is there anything worth looking at? I know Williams caught a touchdown and was called back last week. It was good to see at least he's capable of doing that. But, yeah.
DPJ, 0 snaps, Dean.
Well, I thought he was hurt. I
thought he was healthy scratch. So we all have 3 different things here.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm saying he didn't play though.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. Either I guess he's not as good as Antoine Green or something. I guess I don't know. He's got to learn the playbook.
It was only a couple weeks to integrate him to the offense. Maybe he's active this week. Jameson did run a route on a season high, 54% of dropbacks. Got called back from a touchdown for cheating and illegal block. Also, he did have that big crack block at the end of David Montgomery's run. So, like, that's the kind of thing I would imagine that Dan Campbell sees, because he did spring Montgomery open for the final 25 yards of that touchdown run. So I don't know. We'll see what DPJ's involvement is. But like Reeb said, they've already been limiting wide receivers. I don't think we need to get there in this game. The funny thing is, though, that's the way these two offenses really kind of need to attack, because both defenses have been so elite against the run game. Even the Lions are 6th in yards per attempt to opposing running backs, 4th in the league in limiting explosive plays on the ground. Like, you have to attack him through the air. And we really haven't seen a full game from Justin Fields against Detroit. He got injured he came back last year. They tried to get him the rushing record for a quarterback. So that was the one he was limited in. And then he didn't play another game the rest of the year. And then he hasn't played Detroit this season yet. Not only that, but remember, it was the Commanders, and it was when the Broncos defense was bad. Now they're an elite unit, but that's when Justin Fields spiked his top 5 finishes in fantasy before he got injured in the next game. So we haven't seen Fields since he played 2 terrible opponents and then reached his ceiling. But we at least know that whenever he started trending towards that ceiling performance, it was not only the passing attempts, but also that's when over the last 2 games, he had more designed carries than the prior starts combined. Like, they were starting to figure it out. So it really just comes down to, do you think they're going to attack that way? And if so, that's how we get to the over. And that's how we really get to the Justin Fields side of the ball, which I'm more interested in stacking with DJ Moore as opposed to the Jared Goff side.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you can play him naked or not, and if not, you're going to play him at Moore. I guess Moore is the obvious one. Komet is probably really bummed to see Bagent go. They seem to have a bit of a chemistry together. How many lineups do you got to make here, Rich, as far as getting some Fields? You make a Fields GPP lineup. How many lineups you got to make to get the Fields?
I'm probably not going to get the Fields. I'm more interested in, like I said, him pushing, maybe just adding an element where he's not Tyson Bagent to this game. But I mean, listen, I'm going to stick to myself. Like, my process is, I don't play these guys. If you miss a bunch of time, I'm probably not going to play you, man. So I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in this pool. I will get my access through Justin Fields, maybe through like DJ Moore or Cole Kmet, like kind of run backs. I mean, because DJ Moore's usage with Justin Fields was so different than Tyson Bagent, obviously, because of the strength of those guys. I mean, he had a 30.6 deep target rate with Justin Fields on the field. Tyson Bagent, 14.3% of his targets were just deep, 9.8 air yards per attempt with Bagent. Just wasn't Bagent's game. So at least just adds like an element of spike week potential for DJ Moore, who was kind of showing us that upside before Bagent kind of took over here. And then Cole Kmet, he has touchdown equity with or without Bagent or Fields. Like, this goes back to last year. Like, they use him in the red zone. So he's always a guy that's capable of touchdown. I mean, when you look at tight ends that have multiple touchdowns in a game over the past 2 years, I think he's like right behind Kelsey and Mark Andrews. I think he has 3 games with 2 touchdowns. So like, he has that kind of upside as well. And the one area where the Lions have kind of been vulnerable is 2 tight ends this year.
Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that's the way I'm going to play this game regardless, only because still last week, even if you want to call it a timeshare, 22 routes to David Montgomery's 11. And we know, like, that's how we get production on the Bears here. They're allowing 6 receptions and over 60 receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. So if we think this game is going to go over the total, I think Gibbs is the one I want. And then just hope David Montgomery doesn't poach him at the goal line.
Man, they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown to a running back since week 3.
Yeah, they've been awesome. No, they're, like you said, they're literally the number 1 defense in yards per carry. They've been it's very rare when defensive spending in free agency pays off. We see that go wrong time and time again. But dude, the linebackers are studs in Chicago.
And they traded for that. God, I can't. What's the guy's name? They traded for? Yeah, was that a good? Like, obviously, like, it's about giving up the equity of the pick and all. Was Was that a bad idea? Did they sign him long term? Did they already extend him or no? Or is that something they have to plan on doing, I suppose? I haven't followed up on it.
They have not signed an extension.
Okay. Yeah, because that feels like something they're kind of married to if they're going to give up that kind of pick. But okay. Anything else here as far as Chicago and Detroit? That's wild. That I didn't realize, I didn't realize how good Chicago's defense has been. You kind of stuck up at me.
Really
you guys
good.
putting all this stuff out. And the Montgomery revenge game doesn't sound like it's really going to be happening. I don't hear a lot of enthusiasm there.
It could. I mean, it could. I could see this game being a little slow. I mean, I think Goff's in a good spot though. Indoors.
Well,
we see that the Bears have, they have allowed 6 QB1 scoring weeks. So I think definitely Goff, because the one thing the Bears actually don't do well is they don't pressure the quarterback. That's they're not doing that at all. And when Goff hasn't been pressured, he's been incredible. 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. So yeah, I mean, I think Goff is still in play. He's just a tougher stacking quarterback this week than he was last week.
You mentioned the speed of the game. I may play a little bit slow. Yeah, I referenced Cardi's blitz earlier, and it's got it as the second slowest game on the board as far as plays. Tampa, San Fran, the slowest for what it's worth. You guys got anything else as far as Detroit, Chicago, or shall we talk about Seattle and the Rams?
I'm sorry, Brock Wright stole your Sam Laporta touchdown last week, Reeves. That's all I have.
It's a bummer. It was a sweet play. That was a sweet play.
You can't really tell them apart either, especially when they're running open down the field. It's like, oh, there he is. Oh, no.
It was a sweet play. They had that one in their bag, man. They pulled it out at the right time. It was a really good play.
Did you have a live lineup, or is this season-long stuff as far as Laporta?
I had to mix into some stacks with Goff. I basically last week I only played Goff and Geno.
He got there. I mean, Goff got there. It's just that someone else we're going to talk about is kind of murdering DFS right now and football in general.
Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks, they're taking on the Rams. 46.5 is the total. The Rams are 1-point dogs here at home. John, dealer's choice. Start wherever you want to start as far as Seattle versus the Rams.
Bears, Lions, and Seahawks Rams was in a fight to make the show with the Chargers and Packers, but I just can't do the Jordan Love thing, man. I've sat on it for literally 48 hours, and I'm like, I don't think, as good as the process is, I don't think I can get there. And this is coming from someone who got to Taylor Heineke in lesser lineups last week, and I can't do Jordan Love. Maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But let's start with I'll start with the Matthew Stafford side, because Sean McVay and Stafford have been able to keep these games close, actually, with Pete Carroll. Even last year, remember, it was Baker Mayfield and John Wolford started those 2 games, and the Seahawks only outscored the Rams by 7 points. And then in week 1, Stafford came out without Cooper Kupp, and he just winged it around for 337 yards and 8.5 yards per attempt. Not only that, but Stafford is practicing in full, so we think he can grip the ball. It's always a good thing for a quarterback. And that doesn't mean I necessarily want to play the slate through him. It just gives me a little more confidence in the passing game if I want to sneak in one of their expensive receivers into my tournament lineups. And we talked last week how Seattle has been leaning on zone coverage on over 80% of their snaps, which is my personal threshold. That's when I feel extremely confident that the scheme won't change no matter what the offense brings to the table. And not only has Stafford been better under the hood, by the way, not on the surface, under the hood against zone coverage, only 2 touchdowns this year, but in terms of adjusted completion rate, which accounts for drops and batted passes that lead to errors, he's actually just 9th in that stat. And he's only 1 of 5 quarterbacks to average over 8 yards per attempt against zone. And I think we have a little bit of a lean here for Puka Nacua as well. Stafford is a much better quarterback when he's not under pressure. The Seahawks, since they're bye, are 22nd in pressure rate, even when they've gotten everyone healthy. And then Puka Nacua has had favorable splits against zone, seeing 67% of his targets for a league-high 49 catches and the 7th most yards per route run. I also think the bye just kind of came at a perfect time for Puka because he was dealing with injuries before the bye. He was limited on Wednesday, but again, we don't really pay attention to that, so we'll see if he gets a full practice in before the week closes, and if so, I'll have a lot more confidence in him. So, yeah, it's an interesting game for sure.
We're getting discounts that's as far as 3 weeks ago. Nacua and Cup are both 10-15% cheaper. Down to instead of $9K for Cup, it's $8K instead of $7.5, $8K, 8 and change for Nacua. He's 7.1 on DK. and we're assuming that Stafford's going to be back, so this offense should click. Rich, your favorite amongst those two receivers? Are we messing with the backfield at all for the Rams?
Oh God, no. One more week till Kyron comes back.
Just want to acknowledge it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not playing those guys. I mean, they have a lean to playing Darrell Henderson a little bit more than Royce Freeman, but Royce Freeman's been like superior in like every area. But so I'm just not going to get there. It's interesting. Seattle is a team that I've been monitoring like throughout the course of the season. They're not a team I particularly like to challenge. And that, although Sam Howell got there last week, it was pretty weird how he got there. Like the two broken plays against Brian Robinson. I mean, Brian Robinson had 120 receiving yards.
Yeah.
Like what in the world? Like the receivers did nothing because like with Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon on the field together, Seattle is allowing the lowest yards per catch to wide receivers, the third lowest catch rate to wide receivers. And remember, these guys did like Tariq Woolen just came off of injury to play in that first game and got banged up in that first game. Witherspoon didn't play. They've been so good against the pass. And like, I'm scared like there's ceiling opportunities for any of the wide receivers. Now it could get there because like Daigle said, like McVay has schemed up a lot of stuff in this matchup. And, even going back to the first game where like we thought like, the Rams are going to be a deplorable team, and they obviously weren't. They were able to get guys open all game too. So he might just have like kind of the number here he might have the blueprint. But I am so cautious that they're ceiling opportunity, just given that even like last week where they gave it to 300 passing yards, like none of the receivers got there for Washington. So I'm still hesitant. Also, Seattle's allowing the lowest rate of receptions to outside wide receivers again. Like they corrected it. Like at the beginning of the season when Reek was hurt, like we saw some of that where you were able to beat them up a little bit outside. It's just a different defense than when these teams played, when Puka had the 10 catches and for 119 yards. So I'm a little cautious there. Cup's been playing more in the slot than Puka. Could they get there? I think it's more of a good tournament call, right? Like if you're playing those guys, like because they're at their price range too. Like they become very much large field guys, and that makes them more appealing in that setting.
John, what do you got in Seattle?
It's kind of the same thing where in week one, remember, this is that first game where they lost Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. They kind of lost their starting tackles and had been panicking since. And the reason why we had all the confidence in Geno, despite, not getting there to that point last week. And by the way, in the first half, you watched that game, it didn't look like he was going to get there either. Luckily, we had those last two possessions. Dude. Luckily, we had those last two possessions where he went, I believe it was 6 of 8 for 98 yards and a touchdown. Before that, though, man, like we just never thought he was going to get there. But like Stafford, he's been a completely different quarterback when he's not under pressure. And the Rams are still slightly below average, only 18th in getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So that's kind of the faith you lean on here. But again, I don't even know if I don't know if I get to Geno. I'm still trying to figure it out throughout builds. He is still cheap, but it is a stacked quarterback week because they really didn't move Brock Purdy's salary either. We'll get there eventually too.
I believe Purdy was the one that was hitting the most optimals here on a Wednesday night on DK. Yeah, he was the most popular quarterback. Goff, by the way, for what it's worth, we talked about Goff previously. He was the second most popular quarterback. Rich, can you sell me anybody on Seattle? Anybody excite you on Seattle as far as run backs if you're playing Ram stuff?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, DK just, man, he's got to fight tooth and nail at this point to try to get there. I mean,
4 yards from that bonus last week. And then you couple that with 4 yards for Brock Purdy from the bonus and Christian McCaffrey from the bonus as well, just like 5 yards. It was like the most frustrating 15 points I've ever left off the board in entirety.
Hey, they were trying to get McCaffrey.
But the game plan even for Seattle last week, like they didn't attack Washington like where Washington is vulnerable. I mean, DK literally had 2 catches for 44 yards on that last drive, and he had the beast mode, catch and run to set up the game winning field goal. But he needed that just to get to the 98, let alone the 2 short of it. I mean, he's not scoring touchdowns. The Rams only allowed a 2.3% touchdown rate to wide receivers. They're also like another like zone heavy team. They play a ton of cover 4 and quarters, and like DK's done nothing against that. And he's got a 40% target rate per route run against man, a 17% target rate against zone. So like all the signal would be more of like a Lockett, like versus like the coverage stuff that the Rams run. Remember when these teams played in week 1 too? Seattle ran 12 plays in the second half. Like it was like it was like the fewest amount of plays a team ran in the second half of a game like a decade. It was absolutely just a really weird game. So I assume they run more than 12 plays here. And the Rams defense has really, as the course of the season's kind of moved on, like they've waned as the season has gone on, and they've started to become like more of the leaky defense as it's as we kind of expected to be with all the young talent that, or not to say young talent, the young players that they have, starting the inexperience that they have on their defense.
Well, what was my point I was about to make? I can't remember. Go ahead, Dean. I'll figure it out.
Well, I'm going to segue away from Seattle and the Rams. Unless you guys got anything else, we can talk about our favorite quarterbacks amongst games and teams we've not yet talked about. I guess we can talk about Brock Purdy if you want to talk about Brock Purdy, Rich.
Brock Purdy, yeah, you keep playing Brock Purdy. I mean, why is his price $5,800?
How does that make sense? I know,
Mr. Irrelevant.
I mean, it's super weird because, like, even we talked about last week, we talked about that game and like how he was still, even with the turnovers, it had been like incredible. He's completed over 70% of his passes in 3 straight games. He's got over 11 yards per pass attempt in his past 2 games. Leads the NFL in yards per pass attempt. Leads the NFL in completion rate on throws over 10 air yards or more downfield. 62% completion rate on those throws. NFL average is 49%. Tampa Bay has been getting, like, they stopped a little bit of the bleeding against Will Levis last week. But even with that game, since they're 31st in yards per pass attempt allowed. They're not pressuring the quarterback. When they haven't pressured the quarterback, they're at the bottom of the league in all these metrics. Obviously, Purdy, when you keep him clean, he's incredible. They're at home, 11-point favorites. I mean, he's way too cheap. He should be what, 6,600?
Yeah, for sure, without question. And again, he's probably, who knows, Wednesday night. But as of right now, a pretty solid cash game option. You got anybody else besides Purdy? Do you want to yield to John?
I mean, I just talk about Purdy, so he can take some. I think it's a really good quarterback slate again, though.
I have less confidence in the quarterback slate. I think I can dwindle it down to like 4 guys this week. Whereas last week, dude, like even by Friday night, I had like 7 in my pool, and I just couldn't dwindle it down until I finally got to Dak and Taylor Heineke. So return was split. Don't worry about that part. Also, quickly, because I didn't remember what I wanted to talk about, that the Seahawks running backs, like Rich mentioned last week, how it was a if not now, when kind of week. But what it turned out to be was you had this happen and you should feel lucky kind of week. Like with DK Metcalf, we're kind of at the time of the season where the same guys are popping up in all of our like air yards, expected point models. Like you see every single week, it's Tony Pollard, Joe Mixon, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Christian Watson. It's just the same guys every week because they're getting the same kind of touches and targets that go nowhere. Yeah. And so I feel like the fact we got a Quentin Johnson touchdown on a 10% target share in a week that both Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett left early, I felt like I got away with that one. I feel like the David Montgomery 75-yard touchdown, we kind of got away with that one, considering he hadn't handled less than 70% of the backfield touches in his other 2 games. He started with Jahmyr Gibbs. And then the Kenneth Walker one, going back to Seattle's backfield, man, like if we don't get that 65-yard underneath pass, good Lord. I don't think people understand how bad that was going to be, because these last 2 games now, like Walker has handled 66% of backfield touches, but Zach Charbonnet has run a route on over 50% of dropbacks in every game. The last 2 weeks, he's outsnapped Kenneth Walker 41-1 on 3rd and 4th down. They don't even use Kenneth Walker basically on passing downs anymore. So if you don't get that explosive play, which I know is his calling card, but man, it is so ugly for his ceiling. So I would argue Walker is just kind of overpriced yet again for this matchup, unless you just want to chase the big play.
I mean, it reminded me of that Breece Hall touchdown a couple weeks ago, like where he just caught that dump off and just like really no one kind of touched him, like just cruised the end zone.
I kind of sucked out with Walker, but like I had a ton of them, and like I was feeling the pain until that.
To be fair, he made sense though last week because he was a complete leverage play. He was 100% leverage play because the Seattle passing game was going to be really popular, and it was popular.
Yeah.
Oh,
even
the bummer is Geno threw the touchdown too.
Yeah.
Even JSN because there was no value at wide receiver last week in tournaments, because you can't say like Trenton Irwin was a value because he's Stone Men, and you can't play Stone Men Trenton Irwin into 30% ownership in tournaments. JSN then became the natural guy to fall into tournament ownership. Like in small fields, he was 15, 20% rostered. And why the hell would you ever play JSN into 20% rostered in tournaments? So it's just kind of the way it works, which is also why I pay attention to the cash game so much, because you can kind of start seeing the evolution of how your tournament lineup builds, and then how you cry on Sunday nights because you tried to be objectively sharp. But also, my only quarterback, and then I can kick it back to Reebs because I don't have anyone else, is Dak Prescott. Producer Steve can just cut last week's spiel about Dak and edit in here again because it's the same shit. Tony Pollard got cheaper, and the field is not understanding that this offense runs through Dak. Over his last 4 games, a 70% completion rate, league high, 12 passing touchdowns, league high, 9.2 yards per attempt, league high, and 29.8 fantasy points per game under center. Not only that, but they've taken the running backs out, which has made them a better red zone offense. And that's why the Cowboys in that span are now averaging the 6th highest pass play rate from a 2-score game script. They don't even run the ball anymore when they have a lead. And not only that, people are going to get to Pollard because he's cheaper. But remember, the Panthers are a top 5 run defense since they returned from their bye. It's a 3-game sample, I know, but that includes holding Jonathan Taylor to 2.6 yards per carry too. So I'm just going to ignore the Pollard stuff, and I'll go right back to Dak onslaughts.
I don't think you could get away from Pollard on FanDuel, though. He's too cheap.
Totally fair. Yes, I was talking about DraftKings.
I actually think he's too expensive on DraftKings and he's too cheap on FanDuel.
What FanDuel?
I thought you were being sarcastic, by the way. I wasn't sure if you're being serious or not because you.
No, I mean, dude, I think on FanDuel he is. Let me check. He's 6 something.
6'9" or 6'6".
Yeah,
because he's 6'9" on one side. What's interesting is that he's surprisingly is not hitting optimals very hard.
He should on DraftKings. On DraftKings, I think he's too expensive. I don't think he should be 6'6".
So the optimals I ran, he's hitting 20% FanDuel, just 20%. Jacobs, by the way, is hitting the threshold on both sites. We'll talk about him.
How the hell is he going to carry the ball 20 times in that game?
Well, I mean, they're going to keep giving it to him. That's the game plan, right? And until the score's 28-3.
If they want to, I mean, he's not. We'll talk. All right, we'll talk about it. I'll fade Jacobs. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, Jacobs is kind of sort of in that mold of Mixon where like this is not the guy that's going to beat me. Yeah, and by the way, Pollard only 6% of the Wednesday night DK lineups, and I add some variants and things like that, some bells and some whistles, but Jacobs is hitting the threshold right there with Breece Hall. I guess that's a good entry into the running back conversation. So, John, if you think Jacobs is going to be popular,
I still have more quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, Reeves.
I'm sorry.
And I want to hear that. My pool's small.
Yeah. Because Dak too for sure. You just keep playing Dak for all the reasons Daigle said. But Tua looks amazing. Definitely in this spot at home against a Raiders pass defense that doesn't put pressure on the quarterback. They should be, and the Raiders they just give you all the underneath stuff you want. Like that's the structure of their defense. So I mean, man, he's gonna have so many completions with the running backs there. And then listen, Sam Howell, does nobody want to play Sam Howell? Like the dude just keeps getting there. He's like the current Ryan Fitzpatrick, dude. Like he's out here just having a blast. He gets there every time. And plus he was so bad against the Giants. He's only had 2 bad games that I don't know if people will get there, but the Giants are sunk into the abyss since then. Their defense has been so bad. And what the Commanders have done since the Giants game structurally, they've made changes. Over the past 3 weeks, he's thrown just 50% of his passes over 5 yards downfield. That's 23rd in the NFL. Before that, he was 13th in the NFL. He's gone from 2.7 seconds time of release down to 2.6. He's gone from 20th to 12th. They have him throwing the ball more behind the line of scrimmage than ever. They're getting the ball out of his hands quicker for completions. And they've swerved into, just like the Cowboys, they've just abandoned the run. Now, I think they will run by default of game script here because they're, 10-point home favorites and, Brian Robinson will be on the menu. I think he's definitely just a guy you keep going back to because he's going to get there. He just gets there every week.
Who do you pair him with is the issue. One of the issues with Washington because they do that Kansas City thing where 19 guys get catches.
Terry McLaurin was the one. I mean, listen, last week was again because they played Seattle. Terry McLaurin, that was the first week in 6 weeks he wasn't a top 25 receiver. He leads the team in targets against the blitz. He leads the team in targets against man coverage. Like, I think it's pretty cut and dry. That's Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Beyond that, but it's Terry and I guess maybe Dotson, but yeah, Terry's the obvious stuff. I suppose if you want some Thomas, by all means, but Terry seems like the obvious choice. Okay. Any more quarterbacks? Are we talking some running backs? Let's have the Josh Jacobs conversation. And if we're here on a Wednesday night, we can pull the Pollard stuff and just say whatever we said about Pollard last week. We could say about Jacobs, I suppose. But if he's going to be super popular, maybe it's bad chalk. We'll see. Certainly not a.
You want to play a road? Like, what is he? They're 12. A road dog of 12 points.
No. West Coast to East Coast versus the Miami team. It's coming off a bye. No, I don't want to.
And nobody loves the interim head coach like the Raiders fans. Like, right? Like they beat the Giants, the Jets the past 2 weeks.
I think it's a cool story, but we also know how this fairy tale ends. Like, this doesn't last, man. Like you just said, they played the Giants and the Jets. They're not going to be able to have the league's highest run play rate as they've had the last 2 games because, like, the Dolphins are 28th in plays per game, but they have the highest touchdown rate on their drives. Like, but in a blink of an eye, Aiden O'Connell's going to be down by 3 scores. What do you think the Raiders are going to do that? If they run the ball, you won't get there with Josh Jacobs anyhow. So you just don't play Josh Jacobs.
Amir Abdullah season. That's what I'm hearing. Is that what you're saying? Maybe. Who knows?
I mean, we
I'm
don't
just saying
know.
if their chalk running back is going to be a 12-point dog on the road.
Yeah, it's a bad spot.
Like you said, like that, like the Pollard stuff, even like the last week with Pollard stuff, like the game environment was still all there, right? Like you have a huge home favorite, right? Like this is the opposite of that. This is the inverse of that.
Yeah, I kind of hope he's popular, and I don't think I want to pay him. That's pretty much where I'm at.
I doubt he will, though. I mean, because like I bet right now, because Singletary, like we don't know if Singletary's available yet. Like, because if Singletary's available, he'll be the most popular guy.
He's cheap though. He's 6'8" on DK and 7'3" on FanDuel. If you can tell yourself a story that the game's going to be.
I thought he was like 52 on
Jacobs. I'm talking about Jacobs.
No, we're talking about
Singletary. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I didn't. Okay, my bad. I didn't realize. I heard you mention Singletary, but I was still kind of sticking to the why people are going to play.
Achan's the same price as the draft. He's $200 cheaper.
Dude, I would combat that 6'8's too expensive on DraftKings because again, he's not getting targeted from Aiden O'Connell either.
Yeah. Again, I'm not here. I'm not dying on the hill of like I want to play.
Oh, I'm not yelling at you.
We're trying to skate to where the puck is going, Dean, and I don't think that Jacobs is going to be 20%.
It's like we say we canceled Tony Pollard. We only play sibling plays on this show. We canceled the other plays.
Antonio Pierce said, "If we get 100 yards out of Jacobs, we're going to win, and that's the plan."
That's the rule. This is going to go well. I'm rooting for Antonio Pierce, but this.
Easy game.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Achan. How do we feel about Achan? We kind of mentioned two. We didn't mention one more piece in the receiving arsenal. Coming off a bye, I felt like it came like a good time for Miami. Achan coming off, and it seems like he's like healthy and good to go. Like he probably could have played, possibly could have played a week ago. So I think it's like all systems go for him. But yeah, John, you mentioned the price on Achan. Are you in? Are you just going to go right back to him and assume he's perfectly fine? And this matchup against the Raiders feels like he's going to break one for like 30 plus.
Raheem Mostert is still a little banged up, apparently, post-bye with his ankle injury. Like Reeves said, they are double-digit favorites at home, with Achan having an extended 2 weeks to rest off of the bye week. So I would think he's a little healthier. Curious about Reeves, since he does have the rule about not playing running backs or not playing players when they come back from injury. But I think it's a pretty sweet setup, honestly.
Oh,
and the fact that he's still like the RB1 in points per game, remember, even on limited touches, it's just kind of like Keaton Mitchell, where even if you're going to get 8 to 12 touches, I'm probably just going to play you in your range of running backs this week.
Yeah, I think for this archetype of player, it doesn't really matter, right? Like like me say, like they would have like limitations because we're only playing him for one outcome, regardless, right?
Right.
Like you're playing Achan for him to turn his 12 touches into 150 yards and maybe like two house calls. Like that's what you're playing him for. Like this isn't a guy that was like dependent on 20 carries like to get there, right? So like there's no like there's not going to be a restriction even if he's limited because he was limited before. He only had 38 carries. When he was play.
I think those two weeks to heal extra over his bye week, like, are really selling me on HN more than anything. It's like, okay,
That's how
he's
I
had
feel
more
too.
time than a lot of people.
I mean, Mike McDaniel is pretty like coy about like not really like giving us anything concrete. But here's the thing: HN is still, he hasn't played since week 5, and he's third in the NFL in rushing yards on runs of 10 or more yards. Still, Mostert is second. He has 1 more yard than HN. Christian McCaffrey's first and has 23 more yards than HN. He hasn't played since week 5. Like,
that's a good stat.
Like, just absolutely, he was so electric, and that's why everyone's comparing Keaton Mitchell to him. Like, the same thing. Like, find some touches for this kid. He's the fastest humans alive. The scheme's made, and like Daigle said, not only are they 12-point home favorites, like the Raiders have been like one of the premier targets for us for backfields the entire year. I mean, they're 30th in yards from scrimmage allowed to running backs, 28th in yards per carry. They're allowing an explosive run rate, 30th on 14.1% of carries. Like. And Miami has faced 2 defenses below the Raiders in that department of yards for scrimmage allowed to running backs. One was the Panthers. In that game, their running backs combined for 194 yards and 4 touchdowns. The other one was the Broncos, and we know how that one went. Their running backs had 441 yards and 7 touchdowns. I still can't believe that was a real game that happened. That's like a season's worth of stats in that one game.
What any other running backs we want to talk about? CMC, always CMC if you have the money for it. We saw last week that Shanahan cares about your fantasy team, or at least he cares enough to get that.
That was egregious, man. What egregious effort.
Yeah, it's probably the dumbest play in NFL, the dumbest series in NFL history was trying to let him get there.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully nothing happened and he was fine. But like, if something happened, yeah.
Also, trying to let him get there with Ronnie Bell, Sam Darnold, and Charlie Warner. Like, at least leave the rest of the guys out there. Like, why is this guy trying to set records with those dudes?
At least be coy about it. Like, you're blatantly, you're very clearly saying this is what we're trying to do here.
Well, I mean, yeah. After second down, the Jaguars like clearly knew what was happening because he ran 2 routes and like there's
put like, 9 guys on McCaffrey.
Again, the moment I saw Charlie Warner, I was like, okay, we know what's going on here. Like, this is ridiculous.
Anybody else here that really kind of stands out for you guys running back wise? Breece Hall
kind
of popular.
I think it's a pretty good slate, actually. I have a lot more running backs than last week. I think Brian Robinson is interesting. Kind of like the reason Reeves mentioned, but if we think the Commanders just douse the Giants, Gibson won't be there, but he won't be on the field. So like we can get away with Robinson's carries, and Robinson has out carried Gibson 36-10 the past 3 games. But if we think he's going to be out there anyways for a positive game script, he can probably get away with these targets since the Commanders are 14th in running back target rate, above average rate, since they started changing the structure of their offense and getting rid of the ball quicker. So I think we can get away with Brian Robinson in tournaments. Breece Hall. I mean, we just had Michael Carter cut. That's kind of the guy who's been holding him back on passing downs and third downs. So just for talent alone and assuming more touches in his place, I think Breece Hall will probably become quite a popular cash game option by the end of the week. And then Aaron Jones is interesting. We didn't talk about Jordan Love. Again, I tried to wrap my head around it. I couldn't do it. I've said some ugly suggestions on this show. I couldn't get to Jordan Love. But not only did we just see the Lions running backs together burn the Chargers defense to the ground, it's a spot we continue to target. And although A.J. Dillon was still involved for 10 touches to Aaron Jones 17 last week, Aaron Jones, that's why we look at shares rather than raw numbers. He still handled 63% of backfield touches, which is back-to-back games with season-high marks. So you would just think that he's someone, like he's an answer to pivot off of the Packers passing game in a great spot as well.
You got anybody else, Rich? Anybody sneaky? Anybody off the board? Anybody super obviously missed?
Yeah, I have a couple. I will say Breece Hall scares the life out of me. Definitely price and talent definitely stands up, but he's now above. There's 28 running backs with 100 or more carries this season. He's now only above Rachaad White in success rate. Only Jerome Ford has a higher rate of runs that have failed to gain yardage. Since he ran for 177 yards against Denver, he's rushed 53 times for 134 yards over his 4 games since. And the Bills have been a lot better against the run the past month. They're only allowing 3.4 yards per carry to running backs. That's 5th in the league, 72.9% success rate. So they just and they were good against the run before. They were just giving up explosives of like letting guys out the gates. So like if that comes back, that's like what you're hoping for Breece Hall. But like the Jets offensive line is absolutely abysmal right now.
Oh, it's dreadful. Yeah.
Like they cannot block, man. I don't think it's a Breece Hall problem. I shouldn't say that Breece Hall scares me as much as like just the environment. I think the Jets' offensive environment from a rushing structure is just lousy. It is.
What are their practices like? Because their D line is ridiculous and their offensive line is horrific, right? So they must just like bully them around. I don't know. Are they still hitting each other?
I do think Daigle's right. I think at 6,400, I think he's going to be really popular though. Because the upside he offers, and I don't have any problem with it. My Amon-Ra play of the week, my favorite running back on the entire slate is Austin Eckler, though. Austin Eckler has had just an absolutely miserable slate since he's come back. They faced nothing but incredible run defense since he's come back. He's faced the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bears, the Jets, and the Lions since he's come back. But he keeps getting just an immense workload. I mean, he had 82% of the backfield carries. He's had 7 targets in his past 3 games. Now he's getting this Green Bay defense that's been trampled on the run. They let the Steelers run down their throats the entire game last week. The Steelers ran for 206 yards on the Packers last week. Also, with the state of this wide receiver core, it's back to where we were last year. Like if Keenan Allen doesn't play in this game, and I think Keenan Allen probably will play in this game, but if Keenan Allen doesn't play in this game, like we're back to where we were last year. With Keenan Allen and Mike Williams off the field last year, Austin Eckler had 26% of the team targets. Like even if Keenan Allen's banged up, I still think we're getting 7+ targets. We've got his first good like matchup on the ground there. If his game was at home, I'd feel a little bit maybe more like going all in. But I think he's probably my favorite running back on the slate.
You got to pay for him, but he absolutely be a separator for sure. Rich gave the Amon-Ra play of the week or the play of the week by position. John, on Twitter, you give the F around and find out. Do we know who we're effing around with and finding out just yet? Or we're still kind of figuring that out?
Buddy, even when I had Dak stats, we found out what happens when you play Drake London with Taylor Heineke, and it was not good. That was literally a core single injury for me, and Drake London, boy, he did not get there. No, my wide receiver pool is actually pretty shallow too, because again, I think that's where we're really grasping at straws here between Keenan Allen being out. So maybe everyone naturally gets to Quentin Johnston and Jalen Guyton. I think DeAndre Hopkins, I don't mind going back to him. The thesis is like Will Levis has been so bad under pressure. Even last week, just 2 of 8. Now he's at completing 41% of his passes for just 4.5 yards per attempt under pressure. But the entire reason we got to Brock Purdy onslaughts last week was because the Jaguars defense is severely overrated. And again, they did not create pressure at all. Still a bottom 8 team in creating pressure on the entire season. So I don't mind getting back to DeAndre Hopkins since he leads the team in target share. Don't watch the game because watching Will Levis will give you some emotions, man. Like that ball flies everywhere. Anytime it leaves his hands. And then, yes, like Reebs kind of set it up. It's not good. It's not pretty, but I understand like the thesis of the slate and trying to find value anywhere. And maybe it is Darius Slayton for cheap because
oh no, I thought
were you really going to bring him up or did I force it?
You kind of forced it, but I mean, still, like we know the Commanders.
Is your favorite player? Is Darius Slayton your favorite player in the
NFL? Isaiah McKenzie is actually my favorite player because he's too talented and should add more reps. But Jalen Hyten's out. Again, Tommy DeVito was the QB 15 last week. We know we talked about it last week. Like Geno Smith got there as well. The entire passing game can get there against Washington. I don't know, man. Don't pressure me.
I love it.
I don't know.
I'm
still trying to find value. I'm still trying.
Not an endorsement, but I'm pretty sure on the last play, like the last series of the game, the Giants were down like 40 or so. Slayton was still out there. Like he was still catching like 5-yard passes.
They don't like him as much as me.
DeVito was huge last week. Him stealing those couple points away from the Cowboys defense was huge because I didn't play any Cowboys D last week, but that late garbage time touchdown actually stripped a few points away from Dallas. It was huge, man.
Did you pivot to Ravens as well?
Yeah, I had Ravens.
I played Ravens everywhere.
I had Buccaneers.
I had Seattle. Yeesh. Did not work out.
Buccaneers was good. Buccaneers was a good call. Yeah.
Yeah, Buccaneers I had against Levis.
I do. Like, it's funny because the way Tommy DeVito plays football is not good, but it's good for fantasy. He's literally scrambling on 20% of his dropbacks. He just literally takes off, man, and he adds these rushing points every single week. It's wild.
But God
Whose
bless
line
him.
is
I was
worse?
sitting there watching. I was the only one watching like the end of that game. Like, come on, steal some of these points from Cowboys D.
Whose line is worse, the Giants or the Jets? Can like the New York, the state of New York? I guess they're in New Jersey. If you know what I mean, go with it. Can they form one decent line between the two teams and they somehow morphed? No.
No,
Right? They'd have two good
think
starters,
can.
right? You'd have Andrew Thomas and you'd have Vera Tucker when he's healthy, and like the rest of the dudes you'd have to put together.
That's amazing.
Although, let the record show, this is the Jets' fault. I don't think it's the Giants' fault. They don't have the best offensive line, but Tyrod Taylor was doing just fine. Daniel Jones has cowered under pressure this year. Literally, the worst quarterback has the highest sack rate taken in the league. But the Jets understood they had a 40-year-old quarterback and not only did nothing to get a better backup, because again, he's 40 years old, but did nothing to improve their offensive line. This is their fault. I don't feel sorry for them.
This is a DFS. We care about this week and this week only. But like, are we buying that Rodgers is coming back in a couple weeks? Is that going to happen, or well, do we put any thought into that, or we don't care?
Listen, whatever. But talk to me when it happens.
Yeah, otherwise it's a waste of time.
I'm not concerning myself with it right this moment.
That's probably the best way to deal with it. Okay, let's talk. Think about other things we love talking about is tight ends. Our favorite tight ends that we've not yet.
You want some more wide receivers, or no?
Please go ahead. Go for it. I'm sorry. Did I cut? Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah. No, I got a few more too. Obviously, when you have something like what's going on with CeeDee Lamb, we saw like last week where like people don't believe it's sustainable, so like his ownership starts to drop. Like we saw that. Like if people are like, "Well, he's not going to have 10 for 150 every game." We saw this with AJ Brown when he was on his streak too, right? People were like, I know the streak's going to end. I don't want to play him. Like, man, CeeDee Lamb, we just keep playing him. We talk Brandon Ayuk. We talked about we talk about Tampa Bay against outside wide receivers. Levis got in the way for us last week, but there was opportunities in that game for DeAndre Hopkins to make plays. So I still like Ayuk the most of the 49ers guys. I got a wild card for you.
Okay.
Adam Thielen. Kind of been left for dead.
Sure.
But I wrote about this last week, and I've been writing about it for a couple weeks in the worksheet. But like, as the sample's grown in this season, like Thielen has only been good in blowouts, like when Carolina gets flooded. And like we have kind of one of those potential games where like they're huge dogs. And like they played like 3 games in a row with neutral game script, and Thielen hasn't gotten there. Also, the Cowboys play man coverage on 43% of their snaps. Against man coverage, and Thielen is 38% of the team targets. He's been targeted on 30% of his routes, 2.5 yards per route run. Against zone, only 23% of team targets, 1.53 yards per route run. Target on 20.4% of his routes. I mean, it's gross. No one wants to really play him at that price. He hasn't been good, but I still think the signal kind of leads towards him being kind of good again this week.
I should have mentioned him, because I'm so high on Dak stacks, whether it be just in terms of finding value too, because you can go to Jake Ferguson and or Brandon Cooks, that I was probably naturally going to play Thielen for his target share and negative game script and hope to get there with like a little natural game stack. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the salary should be cheaper, right?
It's not really though.
Yeah, it hasn't come down. Like you figure we get a discount.
That's also why no one's going to play it.
No, he's not getting played at 75.
No.
7.5 DK, 7K on Fanduel, probably a little bit better play.
Yeah.
Probably a little better play. If you don't have the salary to do that as a run back, are you okay with like Hubbard? Is Hubbard a better run back than Mingo?
No, don't play Hubbard.
Is Hubbard not going to get like little dump offs? Like if they're coming back here?
Ask Tony Pollard how touches are going. Like, no, the touches don't matter. Do not play Hubbard.
All right. Well, what if I'm just trying to think if I have no money.
I think maybe this is the line you use, Reeves, and I think I've stolen your line now this week. Is that how Miles Sanders got benched is how Chuba Hubbard is playing right now. Like, so like Hubbard's going to get benched because he's playing just like Miles Sanders was.
Well, we've started to see it even last week. His touch, they just dropped a little bit. His touch share, the Miles Sanders started to play a little bit on passing downs. So it's like, all right, just like enough. Eventually it's like, well, we paid this guy. Let's at least go back to him a little bit because the other guys that do anything when it's really just a structure problem, right? Like they just suck on offense.
And like the Seahawks backfield, like just enough is more than enough to cannibalize one another. And then you're just crossing your fingers either one gets there.
Yeah. Give Blackshear a shot. Why not? If you're just running people out there, he'll probably fall on his face too. Obviously, like you said, it's just the way the offense is set up. You got anything else here, Rich, as far as receiver? Anybody else we should focus on? As far as a big spend, Rich, you got Tariq, or do you have Lamb?
That's rough. I would say Tyreek still, but it's just by a thin margin.
Yeah. Lamb, was he the first person ever? Was it 350 yards and so many touchdowns, whatever, 3 weeks in a row?
10 catches for 150. The thing about Lamb, and I brought it up a couple weeks ago on the show, was that they started, like, he's playing inside and outside now. And, like, he's so good. And I understand why they never wanted to move him out of the slot because he's so good. But, like, just by him getting outside a little bit, it just gives him access to some types of targets on the route tree that, like, are just a little more rich in fantasy cholesterol and just have a little more calories to them. And just by getting those little bit more of targets, it's taking his ceiling to like another stratosphere.
Any more receivers? Otherwise, we'll move on and talk about some tight ends, begrudgingly. Anybody else? All right, tight ends. So I mentioned before, John, in DK Optimals, we are getting 2 tight end builds on a Wednesday night. Let's not lose ourselves or lock it in. But McBride, 55%. You know who's coming in at 53% in addition to McBride? And somebody else is coming in at 41%.
Kincaid?
Yes. Kincaid is the second guy. And the third guy is coming back from injury.
Yeah, I'm not playing the third guy.
No, you can't play Freiermuth. Do not do that to yourself.
Did you see his price?
Yeah, he's mid.
It's 2.5. 2.5.
Oh, goodness.
Look at Dean, pull up the Freiermuth's game log while he was playing. And tell me if that's worth 2.5.
Dude,
well, sometimes 9 points is fine for 2.5.
That's true.
Is he going to get the 9 points?
Rule of thumb, I always say, I will not yuck anyone's yum on the punt play. If you want to punt, then you know what you signed up for.
I yuck punt plays in tournaments when they're going to be over-rostered. And given that salary, like you said, 9 points, Dean, the Browns are allowing 3.6 points per game to opposing tight ends. They're allowing triple your guesstimate. Also, Freiermuth was like bad. Deontay Johnson was out. And in those 3 games, Freiermuth had an 11% target share. Like, does he even reach 3 targets in this game?
I would just say we played worse players at 2.5 than Pat Freiermuth.
Buddy,
Can I say that?
I've played so much worse player. I played Tyler Heineke last week. I can play some bad players on you. Don't worry about it. But like, I can't play 30% bad Freiermuth into tournaments. I can't do that. I'm not.
When you're 2.5 and you're breathing and you're on the field and like you're at least capable of running a route, then if I'm pitching pennies, and sometimes the tight end position is just like overall all of it's bad except like 1 or 2 guys. And
maybe if it becomes, again, we all talk about this differently on our shows on Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Maybe if it becomes where the 2,500, you don't even care what he does. It just opens up more because it makes the slate in your lineups work. That's when I play him. But structurally or like just objectively, the worst play on the slate. No, make him 500.
To be clear, I'm not endorsing it. Just the way you said it. Like, it's not what Freiermuth does.
We don't even know if he's for sure playing though either. So let's not even go down the rabbit hole.
Okay, fair enough.
As the chat points out, Mayer at 2,700, I think is pretty fun because again, the Raiders, unless they just want to be stubborn and run the ball into eternity, they can't run the ball in this game. Like they just won't get away with it because they're going to be down 2 or 3 scores within the first half. And then what do they do? And if that's the case, then we at least saw Mayer have a season high 20% target share last week from Aiden O'Connell. So I'd be fine with Mayer as a tournament pivot trying to make it work too.
Theoretically, that is the future they want, right? They want it to be O'Connell to Mayer and not Hooper. Is Hooper still getting run? And he's wearing a uniform? He's on the field.
No, that was only that was only a Josh McDaniel thing. And guess what? The moment they fired Josh McDaniel, we were done with that shit. Like, we're not going back.
Hooper was bummed. He was bummed to see him walk out the door.
Did you see Florio suggest that the Bills hired Josh McDaniel?
I mean, did you see Florio suggest that Dan Campbell's the next Aggies coach? Let's just keep it going.
Oh, that's
Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year favorite, is the next Aggies coach. Boy, when you just lost it, when you've run out of anything to have, you just start grasping for everything.
You Rich, you like the Mayer call? Other tight ends you think that are interesting and worth a head nod?
No, I mean I think Kincaid makes sense because just structurally where the Jets are really good defensively, like they funnel targets to tight ends inherently because they're so good against wide receivers. So I do think that Kincaid makes sense too if you're playing him. If you're going away, because him and McBride are the same price, right?
Close.
Okay, so Kincaid is 4.9 and McBride is
4.4. And on FanDuel, McBride is 5.9 and Kincaid's 5.8. So like they're basically the same exact price there.
Yeah. Who do you prefer? You got to lean?
I still prefer McBride just because like everything lines up. But I do like Kincaid though.
Yeah, nobody's playing Bills today outside of Kincaid. I wouldn't imagine. Just their offense.
And I don't care about eating tight end chalk either.
Anybody else that we should mention? I'm looking at the list and seeing anybody.
And also, like chalk this year hasn't even really been like actual like contextual like really bad chalk like where anyone we've needed to avoid guys on slates either.
It's been hitting a fair bit.
We've had like 3 guys, right? Like if Ty Chandler was on the slate, he'd be like the conversation, right? Like that'd be
I'd play Ty Chandler on the slate. I'd be a
right. Like, but like I think like the closest we came was who was it before? It was Josh Kelly, right? Like was the like that wasn't like
that was so bad.
Chalk. But like the type
against
of
Tennessee.
Chalk, but like the type of chalk we've seen this year, like hasn't been like stuff where you have to run from.
Correct, because until this point we've gotten Mostert and Achane chalk, and the chalk that you do run from is one you shouldn't play anyways, as we talk about every week. Pollard, Mixon. And Jacobs before Antonio Pierce in a great spot. Yeah, that's really it.
But like a lot of people talk about like the highest owned guys and stuff. Like, dude, I don't really care if Trey McBride is going to be 20% owned. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's still only 1 in 5 lineups. Like I know ownership's important and it's important to stress, but it's like there's other players in your lineup that are going to be 3, 4, 5, 6%. And those are your separators, right? For better or for worse. Is that it? We're done. Any more tight end talk? Any more tight end talk? We done with basketball?
Never more tight end talk than you force us to. No.
I'm sorry to someone in the chat that let me know that the Bears did extend Montez Sweat. I missed it.
Yeah, it was 4 years, $98 million. I forgot about that. Yeah,
I thought I saw that, but I didn't want to commit to it.
That's my bad.
Which is still odd because they gave Jalen Johnson, who's a true like island shutdown corner, they gave him a good offer. Or no, they lowballed him, and he was pissed off, which is why he tried to request a trade. So I don't understand why they were willing to give Sweat the deal, but not like an actual young upcoming piece as well. That deal as a cornerback. I don't know what the Bears do anymore. It makes no sense at all. Even though
what's the tag? The
I'm
tag
wearing my
for
Soldier Fields shirt.
The tag for cornerback is it cheaper than defensive end? Maybe that's why they're just factoring in like if they if they have to tag Johnson. I don't know. Whatever. We talked about Schultz in the other segment though. Chat person. Yeah. I don't know if it's Yui. Yui. I don't know how to pronounce it. Like this is why I do like a Sunday chat with the subscribers and stuff, and like sometimes it drop the names. I'm like, Jesus, I'm gonna botch this name.
The whole point is to botch the name. Is to be human.
Yeah, I guess so. Bring Rob in. Let's get Rob in here.
It's definitely ooh-wee 2K for the name.
That's got to be what it is, actually. What's up, bud?
What's going on? And I'm playing Tony Pollard until morale improves.
Oh, are you just like martingale-ing it? Have you been playing him every single week, and that's that?
I press the button, I cry, and then I move on to the next position. I go back, I stare at it again, and I'm just like, all right, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna be poor again.
So the reason why, one of the big reasons why producer Rob is here. Well, this is the end of football talk. If you're done with football, if you want to hear us talk about,
no, you're gonna stay for this one.
I'm not saying you should go away. I'm not trying to shoot anybody away, but I don't want people to be like, "Could you talk about some more tight ends already?" You know, just want to let them know.
We set this one up accordingly because it needed, just like the movie is. It's really just a giant setup to the main moment or the last 30 minutes.
See, I didn't even see the setup, so I don't know what I'm in store for. Because I listen to you guys. You guys accompany on my ride to work in the morning, so I make sure I don't listen to the early part, and then I get you for the ride into work on Thursday mornings. So I'm sure I'm gonna hear some shit on the ride in tomorrow.
Well, I might have said, I can't remember if I said this off air or on air, but I thought we had the pact amongst the show, like fun movie recommendations going forward. And I was called out for not recommending fun movies. And Bone Tomahawk, we'll talk about it, but I think we all can agree, not a fun movie that Rob assigned us.
To be fair, it is a feel-good movie in a way. We get some people escape with their lives. Some, not many.
So I'll just read the quick synopsis and I'll throw it to Rob. In the Old West, a sheriff, Kurt Russell, his deputy, Richard Jenkins, a gunslinger, Matthew Fox. I didn't know that was Matthew Fox until halfway through the movie. I'm like, is that Matthew Fox? Party of Five? And a cowboy, Patrick Wilson. They embark on a mission to rescue 3 people from a savage group of cave dwellers. Rob, you won our contest last week. You guys can participate. I dropped the link in chat. The link's going to be under the description as well on the YouTube. Feel free to join us. If you finish first, you get a month free of RG Premium. We punish each other. I think punish is probably not the right word. Just assign a movie, the winner amongst our group, assigns a movie for everybody else to watch. Rob, tell us why you had us watch Bone Tomahawk.
Well, I had already picked a horror movie. I had also already picked a action comedy. So I decided to go Western/horror. And I knew that there would be a reaction to this movie if you hadn't seen it. So I can't start talking about this movie. Rich can't start talking about this movie. It's got to be you and Daigle, as this was your first viewing experience. And what did you gentlemen think of the movie Bone Tomahawk?
I yelled to Daigle because he's very excited to talk about it. So I want to hear. Yeah. I just want to hit play and hear him go.
I think I loved it. I think I really, really loved it.
I told you.
And okay, so Tombstone is one of my favorite movies of all time. Love it. Cormac McCarthy litters this bookshelf. My favorite author of all time. Blood Meridian is one of my favorite books of all time. Which Blood Meridian, it is this. They've never been able to take it to screen because they haven't figured it out. But it literally is just scalps and blood everywhere you walk across the plains of Texas to New Mexico. And that's exactly what this is. I love that kind of setting, which it just comes out of nowhere. And what I love about it a lot also is the quirkiness and the genius it is. I admittedly am not someone who wants or even needs gore. Like I just kind of avoid it. But I don't run from it. And at first I was turned off because they literally, the screen goes from credits, open up the movie, and you have someone Adam's apple being dug out with a knife. Like, let's just start there, right? But in a way, it's genius because it prefaces what's about to happen. It's just like, get ready because we're not holding anything back the rest of this movie. And then, like, as you see, it's like 20 to 25 minutes of just, it keeps on calming you down, but also presenting that this is going to be a violent movie, but then also weaving in the weird quotations, and the script is kind of brilliant because it's all a slow build to the last 30 minutes. Like, it's not as violent until we get to the last 30 minutes, but then you have the weird quotes. Like, I wrote them down because I thought it was just so genius. John, make any flirtation remarks in my wife's presence, there will be a reckoning. If you want to question my morals, do it later. And then what did he say whenever he shot that bird out of the nest or out of the trees? What's that famous quote, Rob?
Oh, I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Gosh, I'm
the response to the response to the questioning their morals. He said, like, I don't think you have any. I can't remember how you phrased it, but it was a clever retort, but I don't recall the exact line.
Well, the dialogue all around in this movie is great.
It's so good.
Very good.
It's so fucking good. Even smart men don't get married. Like, that's it. It's that simple that he walks away. It's like, great. This is such a brilliant movie. But then again, okay. So it's all building up. It's an hour and a half of building up to then meeting the cannibals. And it's just like from that point forward, it's like, what the hell are we doing here? Even when they, spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, spoilers, by the way.
I had to go back and I had to go look at the rankings of the most horrific scenes in horror movie history. Because this is not a horror movie either. It's I
think it kind of is.
It's a mix. It's like a Western horror.
It's not really horror Western.
It's not scary. It's
yeah, but they're not like real people. You know, it's
they're troglodytes, is what I believe they're called.
It's like a noir Western.
They call them troglodytes. Yeah.
I love it, but I can't even explain what the hell this genre is, which is maybe why I don't see much of it, because I don't even know what it is. But they don't really warn you. You just kind of get captured by getting choked out or a literal bone tomahawk shoved through the back of your throat, and then you get dragged because you're out of conscience to the cages of the cannibals. And the next thing you know, you look up and you see your friend, his feet grabbed, one person on one side, one person on the other, and the cannibals just split him open, quite literally in front of your face. They just spread him and rip him open right in front of you. I will say, though, as much as that
long way, by the way, the long way, not halvesies, not like
no
torso.
No, absolutely not. The long way. I will say at that point, though, the gore got a little more cartoonish. Like even towards the end, whenever Kurt Russell's fighting for his life, like the gunshot into his belly, his murderings of the other cannibals, it got a little like, because he took the tomahawk to someone's head and their head exploded. Like it got a little more funny by that point. So it's more accepting. I just think you do need to be a little bit warned, because it's an hour and a half of setting up to get a man ripped in half, and you're just not ready for it when it happens.
See, I liked going into it not warning you, because we get beautiful tweets like the one that we saw during the week where I decided I'm going to watch Bone Tomahawk. I'm going to get some lunch. And then 2 hours later, you can see they go, oh my God, WTF. It was amazing.
You knew exactly which part of the movie that commenter reached. Yes. On Twitter, replying to us, you knew he had finally reached the sell part. Yeah.
So, I picked this movie for you.
I think I love it.
I thought you would like it. I was like, I think this is a Daigle movie for some reason. So that's why I assigned this movie.
I watched it twice.
Was it for you, John?
I watched it twice. You answered my question. This is the first time I've watched a movie early because I had some free time. I didn't go out Saturday night, so I watched this Saturday night. And then I kind of woke up and I was like, I'm horrified. But then by Monday came around, I'm like, I think I need to watch it again. I need to see it one more time to comprehend what I just saw. I think I love the genre. I think I loved it in general. The characters, the dialogue. I think it's great. It's really good.
Dean, what did you this is your first time watching it, Dean. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm generally not a big horror guy. I don't like run away from it, but generally not a big horror guy. I'm generally not a big Western guy. Like there's some Westerns I do like, but and I see it kind of as a horror Western, kind of its own sort of, niche genre. And I really liked it. I thought the dialogue was great. The acting was great. The story was really simple. It's a super simple story. Like a couple people were taken, and we're going to go get them back. And that's it. That's the story. And I like how they didn't show you that. They didn't show them get taken, but you're just kind of like, okay, guess what's what happened. There was the element of like, maybe that didn't happen. Maybe there's something else, but that's actually what happened. They figured it out very, very quickly, and they had to go on a mission. And Kurt Russell was fantastic. Richard Jenkins, who I love, he's kind of a sort of that guy, I think. He was spectacular. Love him from 6 Feet Under, one of my favorite TV shows from like 20 years ago. I got to give that a rewatch. Matthew Fox, again, was really good. I'm like, oh, wow, Matthew Fox. Why isn't he in more things? I thought he was pretty spectacular. Patrick Wilson was solid. I enjoyed it more than I expected. Definitely a thumb up. I liked it. It was I did not see what happened. Like at a certain point, you kind of figure out, okay, this is gonna turn here. Like it's a slow burn, and you know where it's getting into. I wasn't sure if they were gonna get away or not get away. I don't know if I'll say if that happens or not. That's not necessary. I guess we can. At this point, we're already kind of pocket-bitted. But I wasn't sure how that was going to end. It could have gone the other way. But, overall, I thought it was really, really solid. I liked it. I recommend it. Wouldn't broadly recommend it because it's not like a movie for the masses.
You have to
gotta
know
know a
who you're
person.
recommending it to, right? Like you have to. It's a very specific movie to recommend to people. In my opinion.
Even like they're around the fireplace and the doctor comes, or the backup marshal comes back and starts talking about resetting his shin or his bone. And even that's like it's a half-hour setup to doing it. It's like a half hour to get you warmed up for what's about to happen. Because when he swings the hammer back, the camera doesn't cut. You just get to see everything. And it's like, again, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I want this, but you did prepare the last 30 minutes of our lives, shooting the people with crucifixes that come in or just looking for help. You kind of set us up for more violence that's about to happen along the way.
Is this what you remembered, Rich? This is your second time watching it. Is this how you recall? Is there anything you forgot? Anything like, oh yeah, this is better than I recall? About the same?
Yeah. So when this movie came out, I remember everyone talking about that scene, and like because like when it came, I think this movie was out on Netflix originally. I might be wrong.
Really?
I think it had a theatrical release.
But
I'm pretty
but
sure.
I remember just everyone
short,
talking about
but-
the scene, and when everyone just talked about the movie around that one scene, right? Like it was just like this movie has like the most over the top scene. Like you got to see it, And it's like anytime I hear that, it's like, well, all right, well, what was the scene? So watch the movie. But so I knew that was coming. I tried to hint at it without spoiling anything last week, like when Rob brought it up.
You can't even hint at it and spoil it.
Because
You
people
just
don't
don't know until you watch it.
Yeah, because people have seen this movie know, like obviously that. But no, it's a really solid movie. I like the dialogue and stuff. My only like minor complaints about this movie is like I wish they would have paid off some of the faith-based stuff. Like they kind of skirt around it with Patrick Wilson's character, but like they don't really pay any of that off. And then I would have liked just more lore of the troglodytes. I'd like to know more about what's going on there. Like we know there's like 2 women that like are for breeding and stuff. I'd love more. Like why do they stick these things in their windpipe like and communicate this way? I would like a little more of it. They were just kind of. They're almost like a throwaway, just for effect, and I would have liked more of like the more rationale why they were there.
And even the Trog women were like, it's over the top too, because it sounds like Predator. Like you just yell.
They did have a Predator look to him too, definitely.
Yes, correct. It was definitely calling back for sure.
I love the dialogue in this movie. I love Richard
So
Jenkins talking about the flea circus in the cell at the end of the movie, like just delightful.
They portray that scene to like make sure you get the monologue, because like clearly that was practiced time and time over, because it's such like a famous scene, because that's all he's doing. He's literally just telling the story of a flea circus. Yeah.
How did Patrick Wilson's character get to the top of the cake? Can we ask that question, or we should just don't ask the question? Because it's the rope. Did he have access to that rope? How did he get there? Just don't ask.
I mean, there are a few things you don't ask, like. You just don't ask, like how that.
Well, that's your faith payoff, right? There you go. That's your faith payoff.
I mean, how the troglodytes literally did like the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones teleporting to like kidnap everyone, and then they were just back when it was like clearly like a 5-day like walk. Like, we don't ask these questions.
It's like it is, as the chat's noting, it is a combination of Predator, Death Proof by Quentin Tarantino, and what's the Mel Gibson movie, the first one he did,
Mad
the
Max?
Aztec?
Oh, Apocalypto.
Oh.
It's like Apocalypto and Death Proof had a baby, and Tombstone. That's what this movie is. So it's like it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a lot of fun.
Apocalypto is a great movie too that I think a lot of people haven't seen for some reason. This movie,
we're never going to recommend it. We're never going to recommend it.
No, but if you go out of your way to see it at some point in your life, I just love this movie because of how different it is. Right? You're setting up for a Western, but that opening scene has David Arquette and Sid Haig. Like that scene is incredible. The dialogue there just starts off great. And then Kurt Russell is just Kurt Russell, man. Have you ever seen a Kurt Russell movie that you didn't like Kurt Russell in? He crushes like all the time.
That's a good question. What is the worst Kurt Russell movie? There's got to be some bad ones, right?
I'm sure there's some like, I mean, he did like a Santa Claus movie. I didn't watch that, but like, but we're talking about like legit Kurt Russell
like
movies.
Tango
right?
and Cash Kurt Russell you're talking about.
Right. The Thing is probably the greatest horror movie of all time. And Kurt Russell's in that. So You get Kurt
Captain
Russell,
Ron.
Captain Ron. Yeah, he did it all. Fun fact: when Walt Disney died, but you didn't think this turn was coming.
His head
shares a birthday with me, by the way. Walt Disney, December 5th.
Did he? Oh,
yeah.
See, now we know your birthday's coming up.
Very same day, and his hometown, his house is in like only 10 miles from me. But like, they're so, you know how creepy Disney adults are. There's so many people there lined around the corner every day.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's probably.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Walt Disney had a note on him that nobody knows what it meant, but it said like CIA or FBI and a couple other things, and it had Kurt Russell's name on it. And no one knows what the note was alluding to. So there's a fun Kurt Russell fact for you.
It was the Christmas Chronicles 2, by the way, just to get it right. He wasn't the original, apparently. Maybe he wasn't.
As a kid, I watched Big Trouble in Little China so many times.
Like, such a good movie, too.
Just all the time. I remember when The Rock was going to remake it, I was so mad. Like vehemently, hoping it was going to happen.
I have 2 fun facts.
Graceland.
I have 2 fun. Who David Arquette was also in that movie. So this movie was originally announced in October of 2012. Peter Sarsgaard and Jennifer Carpenter were set to play the O'Doyles, and Timothy Oliphant was going to play John Bruder. So I could see Timothy Oliphant in that role for sure. The Matthew Fox role. The more interesting fact is, did the cave set look familiar to any of you guys at all?
Is it from like Descent or something?
All I could think about was The Descendants, because it kind of, like, the way the movie shot kind of reminded me of that too, but that's it.
So that cave set in the last act of the movie was the actual same cave set used in Iron Man when Tony Stark is held captive.
Wow.
So there's
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's the same cave set that they used for that particular movie.
I'll have to go back and rewatch.
By the way, you guys are saying there's no movies like Bone Tomahawk, and I was curious. I Googled movies like Bone Tomahawk, and I do that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen any of these. Rob probably has. Ravenous is one that's thrown out there.
I actually have not watched Ravenous yet.
From 1999. Dark Valley on Netflix. The Burrowers. Just throwing them out there. I don't know if anybody has From Dusk Till Dawn. Somebody's thrown out there.
From Dusk Till Dawn is amazing. Have you seen Dusk Till? Have you guys seen that?
Many years ago.
Big Robert Rodriguez fan, yeah.
Yeah, I love Robert Rodriguez.
Because although I don't like gore, I love zombie movies, oddly enough, too. I think they're great.
And that movie's not really gory. It's more like a cartoon. It's comic.
Yeah.
But everyone my age that was a Salma Hayek fan has seen all those movies.
Because he co-directed it with Quentin Tarantino, so you're always going to get a little weird, not horror.
Yeah, I have a friend that hasn't seen that movie yet, and I can't wait for him to watch that movie. We're going to be doing that on our show at some point. I gave this movie at a 4.5 out of 5. So that's my rating for Bone Tomahawk.
By the way, I have the Rotten Tomato score. If you guys want to play a Rotten Tomato game, Rich, you can go first. If you want to give me both critics and audience, fire away. What do the critics and the audience think of Bone Tomahawk?
IMDb, I will say it's a 7.1. On Rotten Tomatoes, I will say critics 70%, fans 85%.
Okay, Rob?
I'll go 7.7 on IMDb. We'll go 74% for critics on Rotten Tomatoes and 84% for the other.
Did you just like Price is Right them? Is that what's happening here?
He went one below, so reverse Price.
I'm about to press the right road. I'm just gonna middle IMDb, go between them. I think it's 0.6 spots. I'm gonna middle critics, which I think is 3%, and I have to go below 84% because Rich did 85%. There you go.
So Rotten Tomatoes.
I will say, thinking about it though, I'm thinking fan-wise though might be lower because of the one scene, like people that just like get turned off with a gore.
But isn't that kind of
thinking I went high because people might just say that one scene could have thrown them out the whole movie.
But isn't that kind of a cult classic moment though? Like people probably have to obsess over that moment.
I don't know, man.
No other movie
Cult
does
does, not
that.
everybody else though. Like the Cult Classic,
I-
not necessarily beloved by everybody, but just by a certain concentrated group of people.
That's true. I still can't believe y'all didn't tell me about that. Like, it's just a good.
How?
Yeah, you're right. You can't.
I
that's
can't
fair.
tell you about it because then you're ready for it.
You literally can't warn anyone except to tell them, hey, someone gets split in half in this movie. And like, actually, no, dragged in half. Like,
Buddy, he got
split.
scalped first. The scalping was enough.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, oh, this is pretty bad. And you're just like, oh.
It's
Yeah.
still going.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty.
Oh.
It hurts.
Rich, you were
It
right
hurts
on the
not pretty.
game theory. 91% Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, 74% from the audience.
Yeah, I was thinking it went
And-
high at first. Yeah, it was because of that.
You started the guess. That's good.
Speaking of Price is Right, Rich, you won both Showcase Showdowns on IMDb. It is a 7-1. You binked it.
Bang!
You nailed it.
Banked it right on the
that-
money.
Oh, guess what? That means he picked the movie this week. Congratulations.
Well, we got to put a score. Everybody's got to put a score. We need
yeah,
a
you're
tight end from Rich. A scary tight end, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, there's
But,
only
how-
one tight end that comes to mind, I think, for this, and this one is a Frank Wycheck for me
Why does Frank Wycheck come to mind?
because he was just a gnarly dude, like just gnarly.
was a gnarly
He would get the job done. He'd catch a touchdown for you, but he did all the dirty work. He was-
The Miracles, what everybody remembers him for, right?
Yeah.
The Nashville, Tennessee, what is it called? The Miracle in somewhere?
Music City Miracle.
Music City Miracle. I knew it was some kind of miracle. But okay. Did you
I
put a
wish
score?
I wish it was just called The Miracle Somewhere.
Oh, that's right. You're a
The
Buffalo fan,
Miracle
right?
Somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not a Buffalo fan, but I just wish
Oh,
The
it was
Miracle
called The
Somewhere
Miracle
is great. I love it.
It's got a nice ring to it. It's available. I don't think anybody's taken that. Rob, what do you got as far as the score for Bone Tomahawk?
4.5 for me out of 5.
B plus. I'll give it a B plus. We got a score out of John as well. One more thing we got to do before you step aside and get out of here. By the way, apparently,
hold on. I didn't give you my grade unless you want to do your pub right now.
Oh, I thought you said 4.5. Did I
No,
miss-
I said 4.5.
Oh,
out of 5.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I
my scale
apologize.
is out of 10. No, get my scale right. And I've never given a grade over 8, and I'm giving this an 8.6.
Wow.
I liked it
Better
a
or
lot.
worse than Sideways?
We didn't
Different
have
movies,
grade
obviously.
scales when we
They're-
talked about
they're-
Sideways. Sideways
not
would probably be
comparable.
at, I guess, retroactive Sideways grade would probably be an 8.9 or 9.1. I need to think about it though.
All right.
But they're different
One more-
genres. They're different archetype of
Oh,
movies.
totally different. This is just my enjoyment scale out of 10. That's
Yeah.
all this is. I watched it twice. Really good. But
What's
admittedly, the
the,
second time I clicked fast forward 15 seconds on the split part. I just don't need it.
I was gonna ask, did you rewatch it?
No, I just don't need it. I don't need it. It's okay.
I didn't rewatch it either. Was I supposed to pause it and see like the special effects?
No.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I did go to Google Images to see it like in a still motion because it doesn't scare me as much, and it looks funnier in still motion. I will say that. So if you want to know what we're talking about and you don't want to watch the movie, just Google image, the scene from Bonesaw Tomahawk.
And if you want to see a more gruesome one, watch the original Terrifier movie. And then if you want to see an even worse scene, watch Terrifier
Wait.
2.
what's Terrifier?
It is a horror movie. It is. It is.
It's more graphic than this.
Oh yeah.
No, not an issue.
It-
We don't.
The first Terrifier, very graphic. Also has a splitting in half scene. Actually worse than this one. Way
No,
worse.
we don't need it. We
More
don't-
And then-
graphic than playing Josh Jacobs as a 12-point dog.
Terrifier 2, even
in
worse.
cash.
Terrifier 2, even worse. So if you're into gory, there you go.
Rich, the bar is set. You have to give us a movie that gets the reaction that we got out of Bone Tomahawk. We all liked it.
No, we
It was
don't
a
need
fun
reactions.
conversation.
We can just enjoy ourselves.
I'm just trying to put a little
No,
pressure.
I'm only picking enjoyable, feel-good stuff for this. I only gave us because I was gonna pick Super because Daigle is a James Gunn fan and hasn't seen Super, but I'll save that. Also, if I'm gonna spoil like teaser. If I ever win close to Christmas, we're watching that Mel Gibson Santa movie.
Oh,
Kurt Russell.
Is it
Santa movie?
legit?
No, the Mel Gibson one.
There's a Mel Gibson Santa movie?
Yeah.
Oh
dude.
yeah, I remember. It just came out right, not too long ago.
Like 2 years-
Not
like 2
Violent
years
Night, a
ago.
different one. Yeah.
It's like Silent Night, but with Mel Gibson.
All right.
Uh,
All
If
right.
you liked Silent Night, you'll love. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just going to either comedy or feel good. I've got 3 for you guys. We can either do Spy with Melissa McCarthy, and I know you guys said you didn't see that. I was thinking the new Dungeons and Dragons movie. We could watch that if you haven't seen that, or the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh, is it live action? The new one?
No, it's kind of like Spider-Verse animation.
Okay. So my
But
parents,
they're all just fun movies.
I've
Like,
seen
strictly
Dungeons and
fun.
Dragons.
I've
I've
seen
watched
Dungeons-
Dungeons and Dragons the worst way you can watch it, which is on a plane.
my parents potty trained me by telling me they'd buy me a Ninja Turtle every time I would go in the toilet, and it worked. And now I still have an entire, quite literally, Costco tub of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures that my nephews and niece play with like every day.
I'm jealous that you
Because
still
that is
have
on
yours.
Paramount. I know that is on Paramount if you have that.
It was my favorite shit. Michelangelo's the best.
Yeah,
And
let's do
Spy
it.
is on HBO.
I'm down for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I haven't seen that.
Dean,
I will go
give
with
us
the
your
crowd,
thoughts.
whatever the crowd wants. I don't have a strong lean. I'm good with what everybody wants. So,
I would say D. Do you want D&D or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Rob and
I
I
would take the Turtles.
Rob and I have seen D&D, so yeah, and it's good.
Yeah,
I think it's really good.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
it's got a
There's
lot of
great
comedic
chase
actors
scene.
in
There's
it
a
too,
great
right?
chase
It's like,
scene in that that's really well executed.
Yeah.
it's on. I feel like you said it's on Paramount. I thought it was on the NBC one, Peacock. I could be wrong. They kind of jump around though, so it's on one of those. I'm sure.
Turtles, I think it is. Maybe I may be wrong, but
Also,
Yeah.
I rewatched Mask of the
Great.
Phantasm because we were talking about it last week, and it's
Is it
holds
still
up.
good?
it's on
So good.
Paramount, Dean.
Okay,
Still good.
Do you have Paramount?
that works. Yeah, that works.
I
No
assume
worries.
you have all. I assume Dean has everything.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
All right.
Yeah. So
There it is.
this is the one that just came out, right? To be clear,
Yes,
this one just came out.
the one that was 2023.
Who
2022.
was Casey Kasem in the old one?
Casey
Casey
was in
Kasem?
the Ninja
Or
Turtles?
Casey Jones?
Casey
isn't that-
Jones?
Oh, Casey Jones. I'm sorry. Who is Casey Kasem? Is that a murderer?
He was the top
he was a
40.
radio DJ.
Radio DJ.
All right, we got the top 40 coming in.
Coming at you.
That's what I'm thinking of. God, I'm a fucking boomer. My God. Okay. Yeah, Casey
Ryan
Jones.
Seacrest
sorry.
does it now, I believe.
Casey Jones. Yeah. Who was Casey Jones, the old one? Wasn't he a
Casey
famous
Jones was the
actor?
coach of the Boston Celtics. That's
They-
probably a different Casey.
Casey Jones is the ultimate that guy. Because
Yeah.
every time I see him in a movie, I go, "Ooh, that's Casey Jones."
That's Casey
I
Jones.
never,
Yeah.
I never go, "Ooh,
course.
that's actor's name." It's, "Oh, that's Casey Jones."
I don't remember who April O'Neil is though.
They changed her between the first and second movie.
Yeah.
I used to watch that one, the first one, all the time. I thought it was great. It
The
probably
first
doesn't
and
hold up.
second one.
What about
no?
the
It holds up.
Ninja Rap with Vanilla Ice? Are you into that
That's
as
the
well?
second one.
Is that yeah? And the samurai one is still the worst one, right?
Yeah.
The samurai one is real bad.
Turtles in
Maybe we
Time.
should watch
The samurai one was real bad when it came out. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
the first one holds up though. I watched it a few years back. It holds up. The second one is strictly like nostalgia. Like
Yes.
if you watch it, if someone watched it now, they wouldn't like it. But like if you watched it back in the day, you're like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this because I watched it. And then you
It's-
still get pissed off that Bebop and Rocksteady aren't in it, and they replaced them with these other two random animals.
But then you watch the Michael Bay one when Sheamus, the wrestler, is actually Rocksteady instead, and you're just really confused about where civilization has gone.
Michael Bay did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I wasn't aware
did?
of that. I must
Yeah.
have missed
Did.
Megan
Good.
Fox
Okay.
was April O'Neil.
Live action,
Yeah.
yeah. Go figure. Megan Fox was featured, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all he
Okay.
has in his bag. Although
The Turtles are
although
like
bad-
super jacked, like unbelievably jacked in that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. We'll
although
see.
Bad Boys, I still support. Bad Boys is a great. It's not a saga. There's only two.
This-
Bad Boys is great.
Is there a
I
third?
stand by that.
I think Martin Lawrence was trying to get a third, and I'm not sure if they ever got a third. But
I
I'm
support
not
Bad
sure.
Boys.
Of what? Bad Boys?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yes.
I think there's a
There's a third,
one,
right?
Oh, is that the latest
Yeah.
one?
It just came out. Well, not like just came out, but it came out like within like 3 years.
Okay, I probably saw it. All right, let's all watch Bad Boys.
It's solid. It's actually solid.
All right, so we're gonna
Okay.
watch live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Paramount together.
Not live action. It's the animated one. It's new.
Phantasm of the Mask.
No.
Mask of the Phantasm.
Yes, that's what we're watching together. We can do this together.
Yes.
Well, before we get out of here, we do appreciate y'all listening. Obviously, way to stick around. It's 2 hours, an hour and a half football, a half hour of movies. We talk movies every single week. Get that in here. We'll be talking Ninja Turtles next week. We'll be talking Week 12 next week. Before you step aside, Rob, tell the people where can they find you. Give them the socials. Give them all the good stuff.
You can find me on social media, usually at King Coakley, or you can come watch me talk about Ghost and other horror movie reviews at Hometown Ghost Stories. And if you're into best ball, catch me over at Spike Week.
John?
I do a lot of shit, but if you want to go to 44.com and type in the code BETS50, that's the code we're using now, then literally 50% off either DFS or betting subscription. And if you do not have a good season-long year, that's how we're going to help you recoup those season-long dues to pay your jerk commissioner.
50% off, much like the guy in Bone Tomahawk.
And if you do turn things around as far as
50-50, yeah.
Rich, tell the people where they can find you.
Sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can use promo code TAKE60 and take 60% off. So take that.
Well, actually,
take that. Take that.
It's like if the guy got cut in half and scalped. So
yeah,
60% off.
I got scalped and then I got ripped in half.
But it's fine. We here. Listen, Wednesdays 9 p.m. with my guys Daigle, Dean, and now Rob.
Yes.
For Rob, for producer Steve, for Frank Wycheck, for John, for Rich. I wasn't sure.
Casey Jones.
For Casey Jones. All the Casey Joneses out there. I was Dean. Appreciate y'all watching. Go win something this week. We're out of here. Holler.